Hi, so this is going to be a wrap up of all the books that I read in November. It was only 3 books because I don't have time for my hobbies anymore. And the first book that I read was Raven Leilani's Luster. Beautiful cover. It follows Edie, who's 24 years old and in a relationship with Eric, a much older white man who is married and to Rebecca, and they have an open relationship. They also have a 13-year-old adopted black daughter. uh, Edie at some point gets fired from her job because she basically sleeps with most of her colleagues, and she's underemployed and gets homeless at some point when Rebecca invites her to come live with them. It becomes a messier situation. Really love how intricate this book was, and I really loved reading about the dynamics between Akila as well as Edie because they're both black, and Akila is going through the most because she's a teenager going through puberty. On top of that, in white suburbia, and just Edie giving her options or like teaching her about how to do her hair. I promise I did not start I didn't like plan to detangle my hair, but I wasn't gonna talk about hair politics and stuff like that, but it is a portion of that book. As I mentioned, it becomes like a messier situation. Edie doesn't really know how to respect people's boundaries, and there's a lot of power dynamics happening here because Edie doesn't have any class power. She's a black woman in New York, and then there's Rebecca and Eric, who are white and middle class, so have racial and class power on top of that. And yeah, man, it was a really solid book. I was really enjoying it when I was reading it, and then I was done. And yeah, solid millennial book and millennial fiction book. I don't mean that in a very negative way because I've realized the responses to people calling fiction written by young authors millennial fic and like the push against that. And I mean, I understand that the term can be really, really loaded, but if it is millennial fiction, it is. And I really loved reading Raven Leilani's response to that because she didn't really push back against that. What I also really loved about the book, because it confirmed my own biases, is a portrayal of New York. Because I've always thought about New York as in a bigger and dirtier version of Johannesburg. And in the book, Edie talks about the rats ravishing her apartment and having to like try and kill them all of the time. The rats eating her food. It was really disturbing and very disgusting, just like reading about the abject. And I've realized I'm reading a lot of books about abjection or with themes revolving around the idea of abjection. Second book that I read, which was just like epic and one of my favorite books from this year, is Nakhane Piggy Piggy Boys' Blues, which is really hard to describe. In the blurb, it says it's about the M family, and there's differing narratives when we move into time, like across time a lot, because at some like at the but then I would argue that the main character of the book is Davide, who moves from Port Elizabeth to Alice, and clearly he's been through something very, really traumatic. And he moves to his family's home, the M's family's home, and he's there lives his uncle Ndimpiwe, who works in East London. And there's also a man called Gray, who it's implied that he is either infatuated with Undimpiwe or has had a relationship with Undimpiwe. And at some point, though, Gray develops feelings for Davide, but Davide does not want anything to do with Gray. And both of these characters, Davide and Gray, were the most intriguing characters I've read about this year, because I would argue that Davide's rejection towards Gray as well has a lot to do with desirability, because Gray is a fat black man, but also just that Gray doesn't respect boundaries at all, and he's constantly pursuing. And a lot of things happen in the book that I won't really like discuss much, and I'm still forming my own thoughts around this. I love the prose. Loved the prose. Nakhane really, really knows how to write, and the book was really gripping, and I did not want it to end. And I wanted longer chapters around the M family because they're really fascinating characters to read about. And moving on from that was a beach read by Emily Henry. Seeing a lot of reviews around this as it this book being described as romance. It's not really. It's more women's fiction, and it follows January Andrews, who's a romance writer who just has had her dad pass away, and she finds out during the funeral that her dad had been cheating on her mom. She's dealing with that grief on top of like the betrayal of like this illusion of happiness and how her family is happy, and she moves into her dad's beach house to kind of like sort everything out so that it can be sold at some point. There she is neighbors with her college nemesis. I'm using that in quotation marks because I don't think it was reciprocated. And the college nemesis is Gus, who is also an author who mainly writes literary fiction. January had always been like pushing against this rivalry is based on the fact that January always thought that Augustus did not respect romance because he's like a serious writer and stuff like that. But Gus is like, no, it has nothing to do with that. And they kind of like make this bet that we'll swap genres, and then you have to write this and a literary fiction, and then I have to write romance, and they take each other out to research missions and stuff like that. And then they fall in love. I nearly stopped this book at some point because there was this one sentence that just bothered me. And so I'm reading Beach Read by Emily Henry, and there's this part when what is her name, January, is talking. She's saying, we talked about the most embarrassing albums we'd owned and concert we'd been to, redacted for the sake of dignity. And I'm like, this is fiction. Why are you talking like that? I really thought this book was going to be really good, and I was really looking forward to it. And I mean, it started off well, but the writing has been so bad like at the moment, and I'm just really it nearly became a breaking point, but then I continued and it was enjoyable. It's like a solid 3-star book, you know. And I appreciate those sometimes. I'm like, either a book like that, which is gonna be solid, or a book that's just gonna disappoint you. I haven't had a good reading year, to be honest, so that's why I'm saying all of this. What really annoyed me though about the book at the end was just like this whole emphasis around happy for now, and because they're very like wary that they like each other so much and they love each other, and that things might not go right, and there was a lot of like elements about romance since January is a romance writer. And I don't know, I felt ridiculed and taken like I don't have any brain cells as a reader because of how many times they mentioned happy for now. I'm like, we get it. It's not a happily ever after. This is not a Cinderella story or whatever fairy tale. We get it. So how many times we have to mention happy for now? Like, I even have an idea of how these characters would break up in the future. Like, I get it. I was really annoyed with that emphasis towards the end. I was like, yeah, okay. And I'm currently reading Human Acts by Kang as well, as Mother to Mother by Sindiwe Magona, and I plan on making like an in-depth video like exploring the themes of this book. They have really similar themes about objection and liminality, democracy, and actually bodies. And it's just really fascinating reading both of them at the same time and seeing these ideas jump up a lot. And yeah, I really can't wait to like just have full thoughts around that. And that is what I have been reading. I haven't done a wrap up in so long. Tell me what you have been and how your reading year has been. Some people like, or not been. And I will see you when I see you in a different life. I'll see you when I see you. Bye.